Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a splendid evening.
Good evening, Niall. And yeah, we are having a splendid evening. Thank you so much for coming in tonight, and thank you for all the activism that you did as well at the weekend, because you were busy yourself. You had a good presentation just before we arrived. Actually, you were making your presentation to camera, and we've got that presentation which we'll bring up in a couple of minutes. But do you just want to tell the viewers what was your thinking behind what you did
Yeah,
with
so
us?
uh, it was a wee bit of work. It wasn't as much work as you put in, Alistair. I'll grant you that. You were absolutely on fire at the weekend. So, I mean, we both went up to Dundee, me and your fine self, over the weekend, where, hapless Humza Useless was having his party's big let's waste everyone's time convention. I mean, we know that the SNP have moved nowhere closer to their so-called goal of independence over almost an entire decade. And even in actuality, they've moved further and further away from their goal, further away from voters, further away from normal Scots, and further away from reality, whether reality bend the GRR stuff. So when I was in Dundee with you, I had a novel thought. Um, I had the idea for Scotland's new currency because the SNP, I mean, love them or hate them, they can't come up with any ideas for the new currency. So I thought I would step in and present a currency that the SNP are very, very familiar with. Some would say the SNP have been using this currency for years and years, and it's called the brown envelope. So if you want to bring up the video, that would be perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll bring up that video of the brown envelope, the brown envelope
Here we are in
video.
Dundee at Caird Hall, where there's an independence convention brought to you by Humza Yousaf and the SNP. Although, after all these years, they still don't know what the currency is going to be. But that's fine, because I know the answer. It's been staring us in the face all this time. I mean, the SNP want to push the envelope, but they're actually, I mean, why not literally push envelopes? Brown envelopes full of cash. Why not? This is the currency of the future, guys. This, without brown envelopes, guys, Scottish industry would grind to a halt. These envelopes lubricate the gears of industry here in Scotland. We don't know who these names belong to, but, Little Miss Sleekit, Mr. Weather. I mean, I just picked these up from SNP HQ. I have no idea who these names pertain to. No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. Maybe if you know who they are, maybe you have a suspicion on who they are. But the thing is, the SNP are actually destroying Scotland. They are, with brown envelopes and corruption. When we asked the SNP to push the envelope, we didn't mean it literally. Before you start, we trialled white envelopes. We really did. But Humza despises anything white, so we had to go with the brown envelopes, guys. So this is me, Niall Fraser, reporting from Independence Convention.
Oh, God.
Fantastic,
Yep,
fantastic.
so you would have understood the idea behind the whole thing. I've got some of the envelopes here, so if a wee treat for your viewers, Force for Good viewers, you tell me in the comments who these envelopes pertain to. So this one, Kit Kat, if you can guess who that is.
Okay,
Useless. I don't think that
that's an easy
takes
one.
much. I think that is an easy one. Captain Pugwash. This might take a wee bit of thought. Steak Bake. Code name Steak Bake.
I think I know that one.
So that's about all. We've got Mr. Leather as well, I can see. But effectively what we did, took these envelopes and we stuffed them full of fake cash to make it look real.
Oh yeah.
But I've missed a trick basically. Originally, we wanted to get the footage of me handing Humza a brown envelope. But of course, he's timidly shuffled into the back door of the Caird Hall, Alistair. Can you believe this?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were, imagine being the First Minister and having to skulk around Scotland like a criminal. It's
Yes.
weird. I mean, imagine coming in the back door of places. It's wild. And again, a few things about the weekend actually annoyed me, but it's only through hindsight that you notice these things. But, we should have had a stall set up selling burner phones, Alistair. We missed a massive trick there. We would have sold hundreds and hundreds of burner phones. They would have been going like hotcakes. And we should have had a big sandwich board, or at least I should have had one that says, I would like to buy politicians, and then walking about the Independence Convention. It would have been fantastic. But equally, my efforts were totally unmatched by yourself. It was amazing to see yourself, amazing to witness it, causing absolute carnage simply by stating facts and your marvellous megaphone usage. So all credit to you, Alistair. And again, it's not an easy thing to do. Just walk right into the lion's den and start, preaching the truth. But you certainly have the courage, my friend. I mean, overall, just before you come in, overall, it was a really, really fantastic weekend. We managed to have a good laugh. I think the hapless Humza's wasted time convention was overshadowed by your work, my work. But if not by any of us, there was a woman in the Independence Convention who basically stopped the whole thing, who was a victim of this Surgeon El Jamel at NHS Tayside. So that overshadowed the whole event. And he actually stopped the convention to address this woman, and then starts putting his hands all over, basically saying, going, shush, it's my show, hen, please. So it was a horrible thing to say, to see rather, because the woman is clearly distressed in the whole situation. But
Yes.
again, I have to commend you and your courage, Alistair. There was a wee bit of, so you described it as chaos earlier on, but it was organised chaos.
Yes, it absolutely was. Well, you get used to doing things. It's quite easy to do it once you do it. But what I like about your stuff is you're always very thoughtful. You're always coming up with clever little stunts and ideas that's a gift that you've got. A lot of people don't have that. I don't really have that sort of mind, but you've definitely got it. So good for that. This chap says, Captain Pugwash, is that Alex Salmond?
Oh, that's not who I had in mind. That's not who I had in mind.
Okay, well, don't tell us.
Nope.
If anybody knows who Captain Pugwash is in the SNP, tell us. If anybody knows who Steak Bake is, I think that's surely an easy one.
Yeah.
And if anybody knows who Kit Kat is, you need to. I guess you need to be kind of in on these things. You need to be following social media to know. And Useless, obviously, we know who that is. Stuart says Humza wore a new tie.
Did he?
I didn't notice, but that certainly makes a good. Folks on TikTok, you won't see this interview because it's not being viewed on TikTok, but you'll see us on youtube.com/UK, a force for good.
Stuart McDonald's got the first one. Steak Bake, Blackford, yes. That's one down. We've still got Captain Pugwash, Kit Kat.
There you go. Yeah, Stuart's got that. D Stanners has got Kit Kat.
Of course.
Mary Black. Yeah.
See, the captain. Nobody's getting the Captain Pugwash one. Nobody's getting that. It's not who I'm imagining. Angus Robertson.
No, it's not. Okay. Cool.
But I mean, you see what I'm trying to do with these stunts, so Alistair. It's all about trying to make the public think. And if you, again, I'm trying to display something at the same time. I'm saying, well, it's dual prong. One, they've not got a currency. This whole time, 10 plus years of planning, Alistair, more than 10 years of planning, and they've still not got a currency plan. They don't know. So I'm pointing that out in the first instance, and then I'm pointing at just the blatant levels of corruption we've got here in Scotland as well. So I mean, why do we not just bring in the brown envelope? I mean, it's almost a joke saying these lubricate the gears of the industry. These keep Scotland going. But there's an element of truth in that, and that's why it's a good joke. I think everyone knows that there's a huge level of corruption here in Scotland. It's just it's just about pinning it on the party. Everyone seems it's definitely Westminster, it's definitely Holyrood or whatever. You know, that seems to be the argument in Scotland now. And I did have a conversation with a few independent supporters during this this weekend. And
tell us
you
about
know, well, most of them, the ones that were standing outside Caird Hall, I was banging on about the SNP, and they're saying, well, it's only part of the independence. I said, well, it's absolutely not. So I can, and a lot of these people really dislike the SNP as well, but they just see it as the only bridge towards their idea of independence. And this is why the SNP have gotten away with what they've gotten away with all this time, because they seem to have the well, they've got their voters tied up. They've got them round their finger. They've nowhere to go, really. And they can basically monster their own voters time and time again, and they'll just have to come back. They would just physically have to come back. So I think we're almost at a turning point where even their own supporters, you mentioned the diminishing numbers and stuff like that, they're going to diminish to such a degree that there'll be no money left. There'll be no big conventions anymore, and it's all just sadly going to go away. Well, not sadly for us, but sadly for them. It's going to be the last one at put the lights out situation, I think, with SNP.
That's an interesting analysis. I hope that you're right there. I would say about your stunts, for example, these are stunts that can be done again as well. And you didn't get Hamza going in this time, but you know there'll be another time when you will get him on that. So you know, keep all your stunt stuff together. Don't throw it out, because these things can be recycled, and Scotland's all about recycling, as they say. Now, Stuart says, is it Ken Brown? I think you mean Keith Brown.
No. Think more senior position than that, Stuart. The most senior almost.
Crikey. Okay, good. Now, did you learn anything because I noticed you did speak to one or two of the SNP people outside. I mean, what was your...
Well, initially, there was almost a fight broke out, wasn't there? So, after the situation had quelled, I wanted to go and speak to the guy who's obviously animated enough to try to start a fight with someone.
If I can just quickly butt in there, we've got that video footage on one of our action cams, but I haven't gone through it yet. But this is a guy who just lost his head and came up to one of our people, just like straight in for a fight. And this is an older guy who's like in his probably 60s, right? He's not a 14-year-old teenager. And he needs to be, he needs to sort himself out, because he's an angry old man, and you shouldn't be getting to 60 and still be angry. You know, that's something you can go through at teenage years and whatever. But not when you're 60 years old. Anyway, and there were several of those as well. And one guy was saying he was wanting to start a fight with me. And I goes, look, mate, you're a fully grown man. Yeah. And he goes, I know I'm a fully grown man.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it, Alistair?
Yeah. And so anyway, this guy comes up to one of ours. I stood in the way of him to stop him. And then there was a couple of coppers that were hanging about, which was good. And they just took him away and gave him a talking to. But he still went into the conference. But you're saying you went up and spoke to him?
Yeah, I went up and spoke to him. I actually held him outside the conference for a long time. So the guy, I mean, again, I'm like, what in this guy's mind has made him start a fight with another Scot over total nonsense, right? So this guy, he first of all, he's saying Westminster's corrupt, and I'm saying, well, yes, I agree. He says, well, what are we fighting about? I'm saying, well, Holyrood's also corrupt. And do you not think that we should clean up our own back garden before we go pointing fingers elsewhere? And that seems to be the line that set him free. That seems to be the thought process that I managed to persuade him round to, is that, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Rishi Sunak and the Westminster Tory government, not at all. But likewise, we can't point fingers at them without pointing fingers at ourselves in Scotland as well. And that's what SNP voters need to start thinking about is, actually, let's look at ourselves for a minute. What have we done? Everything seems to be getting worse up here. And it can't all be down to Westminster. I mean, a lot of them will still claim that, but a lot of it can't literally not be. So I think pointing that out to independent supporters that you're not the biggest fan of Westminster almost gets you a wee in. I mean, it starts the conversation. So once you've started the conversation, then you can start to wind them in and say, well, actually, the SNP are quite corrupt as well. Or, this whole time, Holyrood has been acting crazy. I mean, all the money that's been spent on ferries, and we've not even got 2 floating vessels yet. I mean, I'm just calling that corruption straight up. But it's important to sort of throw cold water on this dialogue. That's what I was trying to do up there, Alistair, is that there was a lot of people on fever pitch, a lot of people blood's running high, that we just need to throw cold water on it for a second, just slow down and have a conversation, because we're not too far away. We aren't. It's just that we've had successive Tory governments that people are very sick of, and that's just, I think it's positioned SNP voters to be more entrenched, and I think the longer this goes on, the more entrenched they'll become. But it's important to try to throw cold water on it and talk these people down off the ledge, almost as it were.
Yeah, good point. That's a very good insight, and I agree with that. You definitely would. We do not want to be positioned to be seen as somehow defending the behaviour of MPs, and this is something that I'm always at pains to emphasise, is that as pro-UK unionist people, we don't support the UK because of the politicians per se. We support the ideal of the United Kingdom, the ideal of all the people of these islands working together in as much unity and solidarity as we can muster, rubbing along where we can't necessarily work together, but not at each other's throats. And the centuries have brought us to the situation that we're in just now, which is the United Kingdom, which is the best way we've found of rubbing along together. For example, as I actually said on the megaphone, I said, what you guys want to do is you want to break us up, and then the very next day you want to approach what's left of the United Kingdom, and then you want to figure out how best can we cooperate economically and legally and diplomatically and militarily and socially and culturally. Well, that's what we're doing right now. You want to break it in order to build it back up again. You don't make something better by breaking it and then the very next day trying to glue it back together again.
Yeah.
We've already got a system of cooperation, and we've even got a name for it. It's called the United Kingdom. So let's stick with what we've got and try to make that better. And that was one of the messages that I tried to get across. And I think that's a fairly good message, really, in many ways.
Certainly resonates with a lot of people, Alistair.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think unionists, you support Tory government. Oh no, wait, so you automatically condone every single action Westminster actually has? No.
Yeah. Well, we get that a lot on all our social media
course.
channels every day. Oh, you're Tories. You support the Tories. It's just, and you have to say, well, no, we support the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily support the politicians. Is it Colin Beattie, Captain Pugwash?
No. So so Captain Pugwash alludes everyone. I'll let people know at the end if nobody's got it by then. But even more senior than Colin Beattie. He was a signatory on the
Oh, I know accounts. I know who you mean. It's giving it away. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be interested to know why you are calling that person that name.
I don't know.
When you explain it.
I always
Stuart
it's not
says
funny. No.
Swinny, no.
Although he's a good candidate, actually, Stuart. He could also be Pugwash.
Yeah, did you have an envelope for him?
No, for Swinney. I mean,
I
I
call him
would have had some in Swindler.
I call him Slender Man because there's a kind of horrific US.
I know what you're talking about. The game, the comes and gets you in
character.
the forest. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that gets you in the forest, and I always think Swinney looks like Slender Man.
There we go. Catherine's getting it. Peter.
Catherine Vaney says Peter.
Yes.
Mr. Morrell, yeah. Why did you give him that moniker?
I always thought, he's got the most Captain Pugwash look about him. I think if you Google Pugwash, baldy sort of captain, he just looks very, very similar, I think.
Right. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. Well, as I say, I spoke to one person outside. Well, I spoke to three actually, but two of them were going at me about how the Supreme Court was an English court and this English law was overriding Scottish law, and that's something I'm going to need to kind of lay out one of these days. But that's confusing. That's confusing two things entirely, because Scotland and England have slightly different legal traditions.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't mean that the British Parliament can't make law for all the United Kingdom together. Of course it can, and that law, if it's broken in one part of the United Kingdom, will be adjudged either by a Scottish court or an English court, and they'll look at it through their particular historical lens. But the differences are not that much, and the British Parliament does make British law, but the legal system itself, if you get a job as a lawyer, in England you'll be studying predominantly English law, and in Scotland you'll be studying Scottish law. But that's one of these things that confuses people, and it's one of these kind of British quirks. But it's certainly not right to say that, as many of them do, that the British Parliament's an English Parliament that makes English law that shouldn't apply in Scotland. That's just completely crazy.
Absolutely, our court.
Exactly. Yes. Catherine says that Peter Morrell looks like Penfold.
Oh, Penfold would have been a great one, Catherine. You should have wrote the code names. Penfold is a perfect one for Peter.
Yes.
But we do plan on doing more of these things. Like I said, I've got quite an imagination for stunts. I think we want to get we want to infiltrate where the SNP are and dissuade their voters away from them in real time.
Yeah.
Right as they're standing in front of them. Because I think people are coming away from the SNP. Really, they're starting to lose their rose-tinted glasses. They've taken them off.
Absolutely. Well, let's stay in touch about that. Now, Niall, let me just remind the viewers and the listeners of your Substack, which is Niall Fraser. Now, that's NIALLFRASER 8, niallfraser8.substack.com, and you put articles on there occasionally. You're also got a Twitter, which is twitter.com/NiallFraser8, and you have got a Ko-fi.com. Now what this is people can go to that and they can metaphorically, I think is the word, buy you a coffee, and that's ko-fi.com/Niall Fraser 8, and as I say, that's Niall NIALL, and Fraser FRASER.
So most active on Twitter. That's the best place to get me, really. If you feel like supporting me, please do. But if you don't, then just send us a wee message.
A wee message, because wee messages of hope are always
they go
morale raisers. Absolutely. But if you want to stick in a couple of quid, there you go. It's ko-fi.com/Niall Fraser 8. Now let's have you on again as soon as we can, and let's stay in touch. and thank you very much.
Pleasure for having me, Alistair. You'll have seen that I've picked up my own wee Force for Good badge, managed to put it on for the show.
Fantastic.
So it finally came, and didn't it finally came? It came pretty quickly as well, but absolutely beautiful. So I thought I would honour it this evening.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Thank you. We'll put the link up for our little AFFG Union Heart badge as well, which you'll see in the comment thread. Okay, so Niall, we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll have you back on, and we'll be joining you, no doubt, in activism.
Okay, goodbye from now, Alistair. Goodbye
Take
from
care.
now.
Cheers.